That was empowering.
Yeah, it must feel powerful to like get that out.
Yeah,
I felt
yeah.
powerful reading it.
Hi, I'm Sexsmith, and I wrote In the Hands of Men.
And I'm Devery Jacobs, and I voiced Delilah from the audiobook. And instead of having someone come in to interview us for the project, we're going to handle this ourselves.
This is just us. Okay, so I think I kind of want to start interviewing you, if that's cool.
Yes, totally on board.
Alrighty, I got a lot of questions here. How did Delilah's journey motivate you to want to narrate In the Hands of Men?
It was something that I felt really drawn to. It felt like first reading the novel that it was meant for me as a reader. Not only that, but also to be able to bring Delilah to life. Delilah is somebody who is so grounded and really says what is on her mind and says what everybody's thinking but is too afraid to say out loud. It's a really visceral novel, and it's not one that shies away from these conversations and these topics that are so hush-hush in our communities. I'm just so excited to be able to bring her to life.
And you're doing a beautiful job.
Oh, yeah. Okay, now it's your turn to be in the hot seat. What was the inspiration for In the Hands of Men? Why did you write this story?
So I wanted to write a gritty, relatable novel that really portrays what it's like to be a woman or a femme in this world.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to tell it through the lens of a mixed Mohawk woman, Delilah, who has lost someone who really, really mattered to her. And I wanted to raise awareness for missing and murdered Indigenous girls, women, Two-Spirit folks, and let it be personal. I think that often these issues get overlooked in the mainstream and it feels like shouting into a void. And I was like, what if we wrote this gritty and relatable and it made people care?
Well, it really does. I think everything you set out to accomplish, you did.
What scene surprised you the most when you first read In the Hands of Men?
So the scene that surprised me most actually was when we learned about Delilah's after. I don't think it was what I expected, but it was also really powerful, and I saw how it set her off on this trajectory of her becoming this judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah, for sure.
How did you find the voice for Delilah?
I think of Delilah as like all of our alter egos, that she says the things that we all think. If we went through life really bold and powerful, but still self-conscious and tender and just searching for love, that is Delilah to me. So she's multifaceted, like we all are.
I love that. I completely agree. And even the specific voices you put in there of her, where it's like the wanting attention, admitting to it, where these are things that women and femmes are conditioned not to say out loud, whether it's the violent aspects or whether it's the other components of Delilah. I think she's exactly like you said, she's so bold.
As a performer, how would you describe the landscape of Indigenous storytelling?
There are really specific characters and specific worlds and ideas, and it's a very narrow definition that the industry and world wants from us. I think they want us to be sacred, they want to see stories of our history, but then there aren't necessarily modern interpretations or three-dimensional views of us. And so reading In the Hands of Men, I think, was really refreshing to me because I think it's exactly what our landscape needs right now. It's really humanizing for our communities, and I don't know that I've seen a lot of that in our media landscape today for Indigenous people.
Were there any themes that resonated with you personally from In the Hands of Men?
Yes, I think the themes that resonated most with me were about youth and budding womanhood and what that looks like, specifically when there's a scene in the novel where Delilah encounters this little girl who's wanting to buy a bag of Cheetos and her dad isn't wanting to give it to her, and Delilah mentions how she's in her last moments before her essentially womanhood betrays her, before she's still considered a cute little kid. And I think entering that space on what that switch is, where you go from girlhood to burgeoning womanhood, and how the world treats you differently, how men treat you differently,
immediately,
is really visceral. And I don't know that I've read anything where it's detailed so delicately and in such a truthful and honest and nuanced way.
We've all went through that, where it was, one day we're just these little kids, and then the next day, we're 11, 12, and grown men are looking at us and hitting on us, and that is a hell that we've all experienced and continue to experience whenever we walk down the street.
What is it like to write anger and rage specifically?
Very cathartic.
Ooh, okay.
It's funny because I'm a joyous person.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of rage because I think that if you're paying attention to these issues, it's impossible not to be full of rage and so angry at all of the injustices in this world. Sometimes it's almost a difficult project to even explain because there's so much to it.
When you explain it plot-wise, it sounds so heavy, but it... And yes, there are heavy moments, but there's also moments of levity and moments of beauty and horniness.
There's a lot of horniness, there's some kinkiness, there's also a lot of humor.
Yes,
and I
there
think
is.
that, you know, that as Mohawks, like, we know, we've been through trauma, we know some people who've went through so much trauma, and they have the loudest laughs.
Yeah.
They are
all the anti-laughs.
all the anti-cackles, you know, they're enjoying their lives despite or in spite of their trauma, I suppose. And I wanted to incorporate humor. I didn't want this to be a consistently all the way through chore, such a heavy book to read.
No,
you know?
it's not. You do such a great balance at weaving between moments of levity and then just as we get too deep, then we're out of it. And it makes me think of like growing up in my community and people like my mom saying, well, if you don't laugh, you're gonna cry. But you have to laugh it off to be able to survive and endure these things. And I think that there's such an incredible balance that's woven through this novel for that.
Wonderful, yeah. I think that's just so I think that's just so realistic, right? Because we're not always just in these horrible moments forever. There's always glimmers of joy, there's always glimmers of humor, there's always hope. And I think in the end, In the Hands of Men is hopeful.
Miałkoła, thank you so much for answering these questions. In the Hands of Men.
Only from Audible.